Hello, economics students. We're going to continue our discussion of corporations today by looking at how corporations are organized and how they actually grow. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to have you look at two videos actually today. This one that you're watching now, and then you're going to be watching another video that's going to take a look at an annual report of a corporation. So let's go ahead and get started though with how corporations are organized and how they grow. So, first of all, we've already discussed that stockholders are the owners of the corporation. Also, we call them shareholders. And stockholders can be people, human beings, or they can be other corporations. And you may have already noticed in playing the stock market game that sometimes a company that you want to buy stock in is actually owned by another corporation. That is not at all unusual. So, for example, Chevrolet used to be its own corporation. They are owned by General Motors. So that sort of thing is really quite common in the world of business. Every corporation will have a board of directors, and the board of directors are elected by the shareholders at the annual meeting. Every corporation will have an annual meeting in which all shareholders are invited to attend, and one of the most important things that will happen at that annual meeting is to elect the board of directors. The board of directors are the chief policymakers for the corporation. We'll see in a little bit that they are not typically employees of the corporation, but they are hired by the corporation, by the stockholders that is, to establish policy, strategy, business direction for the corporation. And then the board of directors will choose the corporation's officers. Now, the officers will be employees of the corporation, and their goal is to take the policies and strategies that are put together by the board of directors and then put forth the tactics or the process by which those policies and strategies will be realized. And when we talk about officers, then every corporation will have a president and all the C titles. By C titles, I mean positions that typically start with the word chief, like chief executive officer. The chief executive officer is oftentimes also the president of the corporation, but not necessarily so. Then you'll have like a chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, that sort of thing, those C titles. Vice presidents are basically the same thing as a C title. You'll have different vice presidents in charge of different divisions of the company. And there could be other officer type positions as well that would be chosen by the board of directors. Let's look real quickly at how corporations are regulated. The Securities and Exchange Commission is responsible for monitoring and regulating corporate behavior. The Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, is a part of the executive branch of the United States government. The head of the SEC would report directly to the President of the United States. It's a very important position in our government, and the SEC is a very important organization within the government. They're making sure that the corporation follows all of the rules and policies set forth in the corporate charter. They're going to make sure that the people who run the corporation are running it in a legal way. They want to make sure that the stock markets are operating fairly. They don't want to have, top executives at a corporation who have specific knowledge that isn't readily available to the general public to be making stock decisions based on knowledge that they have, which members of the general public would not be privy to. That would be called insider trading, and it's against the law. The SEC is responsible for making sure that that kind of insider trading doesn't happen. The SEC does require publicly traded corporations to publish an annual report for its stockholders. Now remember, some corporations are not publicly traded, some corporations are privately held. A privately held corporation does not have to publish that annual report because it doesn't have potential stockholders who might be interested in buying the stock. But any publicly traded corporation must have an annual report available to anyone who wants to view it. That annual report will include a letter from the chairman of the board. It will include a summary of the business. Now, in some corporations, that might be very, very simple. A smaller corporation, their business line that they do it might be quite simple, and the summary could be quite short. But think about a company like Disney. Disney's involved in all kinds of different businesses. They have a large clothing line. They have theme parks. They have movies. They have lots of international presence. So the summary of the business of a company like Disney will be very, very long and lengthy and complex. Even smaller corporations like Woodward here in Rockford, Illinois, they have lots of different lines of business, and even they have a fairly lengthy discussion of the summary of their business. The annual report will include very detailed financial information, lots of numbers that show the financial condition of the company, whether or not they're making money or losing money, how big the company is financially, lots of information that would be of great interest to an investor. And if it's very detailed, so I might, as a layman, not understand all the financial information that's being given in the annual report. But if I'm working through someone who's a financial advisor or a stockbroker, I would definitely expect them to be able to interpret that financial information and use that to help determine whether or not this would be a sound investment. That is, whether stock in that company would be a good investment. You'll also have something called an auditor's report in the annual report. The auditor's report is a letter from a certified public accounting firm, an accountant, and the accountants will look over all the financial information that the company is providing, and they'll determine whether or not that financial information is an accurate portrayal of the financial health of the company. In other words, the auditor is going to tell us whether or not the company is being truthful in its financial reporting. As you might perceive, then, the auditor cannot be a part of the corporation. The corporation must hire an outside accounting firm to audit its books, because you don't want the auditing company to have some kind of a vested interest in portraying the health of that corporation as anything other than totally 100% truthful and honest. And then finally, in the annual report, you'll have a list of the board of directors and the officers of the company. And we're going to look at these various items that you find in the annual report in a separate video. So you'll be watching that after you're finished with this video. But I want to finish off by looking at how corporations grow. And there's really a couple of ways that corporations grow. First of all, through capital investments. Remember that word capital. That's one of the factors of production and one of those productive resources we talked about. Remember, land, labor, and capital. Capital is any manufactured good that's made in the production of a finished consumer good of some sort. So that would typically include, machinery or buildings, anything that you need to make something that you're going to sell to the public. That's capital. If you were to go to the Belvidere Chrysler plant, the building itself is a part of its capital, and inside that Belvidere plant you'll see lots of machines that help build automobiles, as well as all the office equipment that you see in there. That's all capital. And capital, it is the purchase and implementation of capital that really enables a company to produce more stuff and allow the company to grow. You can also grow your corporation through mergers, where two companies are joined together as one, and there's several different kinds of mergers. For example, a horizontal merger is where two companies that make the same product or service merge together. Think if, for example, General Motors and Ford Motor Company were to merge into a single corporation. That would be a horizontal merger. They each make cars and trucks. They merge together. They will continue to make cars and trucks. That's one way that companies can merge and become bigger. You can also have a vertical merger, where you're involved in ultimately making the same thing, but you're involved in different stages of the product or service. So imagine that a company like Chevron, which sells gasoline, were to merge with a company like Chesapeake Petroleum, which actually drills for crude oil. They're basically involved in the same thing. Chesapeake drills for the oil. It gets the oil, the crude oil, then to Chesapeake, who refines it into gasoline and sells it, not Chesapeake, into Chevron, who will refine the oil and turn it into gasoline and then sell it to the general public. That would be a vertical merger, where you have the same ultimate product but different stages of the production. And finally, we have conglomerates. A conglomerate would be where you have companies combine that make entirely different goods or services. Imagine if Chevron were to join forces with McDonald's. That would be a conglomerate. I doubt if that would ever happen, but if it did, that would be a conglomerate. Two totally different lines of product merging together in a single company. You do have conglomerates happening, maybe not as often nowadays as they used to, but they certainly do. A big company like General Electric is involved in lots of different lines of business. They don't just make light bulbs. General Electric is a huge conglomerate company. And with that, I believe we are going to stop. We don't need to get into the advantages of corporations because we'll get into that at a later date. But I would like you to go ahead and watch a second video that we will see on Canvas today on the annual report, the information that the SEC requires corporations to provide to the general public. And with that, we're done with this video.